What the city is talking about. This is Montreal Now on News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
That is James MENNIE over at the Montreal Gazette. So, Jim, not sure where to start today. I didn't want to bring up Quebec Solidaire, but they're falling fast and furious there. Is that over, do you think? Are we done?
No, listen,
Yeah?
it's almost as much fun to watch as the Liberals spinning their wheels. But I have a sneaking suspicion you may see a little more concrete come out of the this how can I put it, this exercise in self-examination, this long overdue exercise in self-examination that Quebec Solidaire is undergoing. Because let's face it, to a certain extent, and I understand that they have a constituency to address. They have people there who insist that all the properly how can I put it, politically correct T's are crossed and I's are dotted. But the suggestion, as was made by Monsieur Gabriel Nadeau-Dubois, that maybe the party doesn't need a male spokesperson and a female spokesperson, maybe a lot of what, as far as I'm concerned, has been making the party seem a bit of a parody of itself, as in what we must have. It doesn't matter. We are going to run female candidates in all by-elections between now and the general election because we've got to have parity and so on and so forth. This party is fighting for its survival. Now, the idea is, and I've mentioned this, I've used this sort of to a certain extent to describe the federal NDP, which is some people are very, 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 very comfortable being in opposition forever and ever and ever. You get to criticize, you get to backbite, you get to point the finger, you get to be holier than thou, and you realize you will never, ever, ever have the responsibility of governing placed upon your shoulders, so you don't really care. And you can turn around and say, well, I'm being the conscience of Canadian politics. To a certain extent, I guess you are, if your conscience doesn't extend from looking in the mirror. But I think there are a lot of working people out there who could probably get a better deal from the NDP if the NDP spent more time thinking about them rather than how good they look philosophically. I think the same can be said about Quebec Solidaire. Some very, very, very good people in Quebec Solidaire. Yes, GND is one of them. Manon Massé, as far as I'm concerned, is a powerhouse, really a paragon, a model of what a good politician should be. Sticks to her guns, but also very, very concerned that her main priority is for her constituents. Perhaps to the cost of her own health sometimes, but that's real, and that's about her. And she's got guts. The idea that you're more worried about your colleagues in caucus or your colleagues on the party executive think about you than the public really suggests to me perhaps politics is not the line of work you should be in, and perhaps you should spend your time more profitably someplace else. But whatever happens, Aaron, it's going to have to happen quickly, because honestly, it's so easy these days in this very high-paced, high-speed news cycle for something like Quebec Solidaire to go from being perceived as, perhaps one of the more powerful opposition parties to being a footnote. And I mean a footnote by, say, this Labor Day.
Whatever happened to Léo Bureau-Blouin when you really need him? I just wonder where he is.
But this is it. The world has changed so much in those 12 years. I remember interviewing the three of them when they were leading the Maple Spring.
Yeah.
And Monsieur Blouin went on. He was a PQ. I mean, he was the youngest MNA ever elected to the National Assembly, but he left politics. It wasn't for him. And in the end, here's good old Nadeau-Dubois still around. But I think realizing as well that there comes a time that you have to decide, and as he pointed out last week, we have to decide whether we want to govern or whether we want to oppose. And I think for him, the option is number one, and that's what he wants to pursue.
Let me talk a little bit about, speaking of provincial parties, you mentioned the Quebec Liberal leadership race getting a little more surreal. Is this the Carlos Leitao involvement?
Yeah, I mean, come on. This is like, this percolates a few days after the fact. Seems that there was a Liberal Party fundraiser on Thursday evening, and Carlos Leitao, the former Liberal finance minister in the Couillard government, was there, and he expressed his support for Frédéric Beauchemin, which is, and what I found interesting, and he, in an interview with the Presse Canadienne, Mr. Leitao said, the idea is that you've got to be, what people want to hear about right now is the economy, and they want people, essentially he said, they want people who know what they're doing with their hands on the control levers of the economy. Now, Monsieur Beauchemin was in charge of, I think, the capital, whatever, at Scotiabank, and Mr. Lefebvre was also in the banking sector. They know what they're doing. They're not making it up as they go along. They've got flight time on this, and it seems to me that despite the fact that the really stratospherically placed moguls in the Quebec Liberal Party who think, you know what, we'll get around to being a political party for you when we feel like it, and we won't feel like it until next year. I think this is a bit of a move to maybe rattle the foundation of that and point out time is our most valuable asset here. And the fact is there's a lot of things happening at once. We don't know where any of these parties are going to go. I mean, you and I are just talking about Quebec Solidaire. We could talk about the PQ. Where are they going to be in 6 months? And the same thing for the CAQ. Are they going to keep continuing their plummet into the depths of poll hell? Probably. But if you don't take advantage of that, and I think the fact that you and I are talking about Frédéric Beauchemin right now is a means of doing that. If you don't take advantage of that, you deserve whatever happens to you. People have got to have their attention focused. You have to be something that people are not just talking about, but also thinking about and remembering. And if all of a sudden Frédéric Beauchemin, or Fred Beauchemin, as he's better known, it becomes the name that makes you think of the Quebec Liberal Party, guess what? He's ahead right now without even having had to declare for the leadership.
Yeah, but then again, I wasn't that surprised, only because Fred Beauchemin is the finance critic, right? So it makes sense for the former finance minister to support the guy, and maybe their policies, sort of align financially. I know you found that odd that he came out and did it, but if you're going to support anyone, he's the guy. Why wouldn't you pick him?
Well, if he was a lousy finance critic, I think you could keep your mouth shut. So I think there's that as well. And let's face it, we don't really know. I'll bet you folding money, Aaron, that most of our listeners don't really know what Frédéric Beauchemin's policy, positions are on a lot of economic policies held by the CAQ. And honestly, apart from the infighting that saw him removed from caucus temporarily, I don't think most of our listeners and most of Quebecers know that much about the guy. So, I just found it very interesting that here's this blast from the past, Carlos Lefebvre, who knew enough to say, I'm not going to run in 2018, and really avoided the devastation that hit the party afterwards. It seems canny enough to turn around and say out loud, yeah, you know what, I support Frédéric Beauchemin for the leadership of the Quebec Liberal Party. And who else? I mean, we're talking about him right now, but who else that we don't know, but who may have their hands on some levers of power, are also watching that and saying, you know what, we may want to pay more attention to this guy.
Yeah, although you could probably ask that or mention that about anyone in that Liberal caucus right now outside of Marc Tanguay. But then again, I will point out, Jim, was it Carlos Leitao we're laying the blame on for using the word, what was it again, austerity? Is that his?
What, on the CAQ?
No. When the Liberals were in power, of course, we had that budget that came out.
No, I don't believe so. I think he acknowledged that the austerity policy was a mistake, which in and of itself I found to be quite significant. Yeah. Normally, Liberals don't admit they're wrong about anything. But I remember him saying that, and I also remember him getting in a heap of trouble, as you may recall, because he accused the CAQ at a time you weren't supposed to do that. He accused the CAQ of ethnic nationalism.
There you go, Carlos Leitao.
And there you go.
Kind of missed those days. Okay.
Shows how things can turn on the
Boy, does it ever.
It?
Let me ask lastly, while we still have a minute here, Stephen Guilbeault taken, I don't know, I thought this was a provincial matter, but he's weighing in from a federal perspective on transit. What's going on here?
Well, Steve Guilbeault, this is the guy, this is the environmental guy, so he's got to be in favor of it. He's trying to shake everyone's lapels about public transit. Right now, we're going through a huge feud between some major city mayors in Quebec and the Legault government over the funding of public transit. Right. And I have to tell you, to a certain extent, I do agree with the CAQ government when it comes to pushing back on the mayors and saying, listen, you want these tens of millions of dollars to cover your deficits. Let's see how you're managing this thing. Because I'll bet you, Aaron, a lot of our listeners out there right now, when they're using public transit or stopped using public transit.
Oh, and there goes Jim. Did we lose that line completely? That's so weird. Oh, there we go.
It was made for bureaucrats who plan public transit, and I think that's still the problem now. And until we get around that, until we understand as well that perhaps service should be cut in some parts, it should be improved in other parts. There has never been an audit done until now because Jean-David Guilbeault has called for an audit of all the major transit systems in Quebec to see what exactly is being spent on what. And I think that's perfectly appropriate. But in the meantime, someone somewhere has got to take charge and say, if you're perpetually in trouble, maybe it's not a matter of us not giving you enough money. Maybe it's a matter of you not exactly knowing what you're doing. And I honestly think, to a certain extent, the CAQ government is on something with this.
Yeah, I think you may be right. The idea that you're just off the hook, we'll give you whatever you need. What do they say? They ponied up 70% the year before and basically have now said they consider doing it again, but they want to see their books. It does make kind of sense, doesn't it?
Well, whether it's to the city or the province, it's our money. And I for one, am perfectly in favor of having an accounting of how it's being spent.
All right, let me ask you one last thing real quick. This was my question that I'm going to come back to in a minute now. Most recent polls, and I say polls plural because it's important, it's not one poll. Even after the feds came up with their budget and all the other great programs they announced, they've not budged in the polls. The Conservatives still have a more than 20-point lead now, worst ever for the Liberals. And my question is this. If Justin Trudeau were to step down and announce he's finally going to leave because he realizes this is a hurdle he can't overcome, would people change their vote, do you think? If it wasn't him.
It'll be an immediate 10-point boost for the Liberals. And I have to tell you, if they don't shoot themselves in the foot and they get someone competent in the leadership, lickety-split, I guarantee you Pierre Poilievre's star will fall as quickly as it rose. But the problem is right now, and this is my plea, if Justin Trudeau cares about his country, Canada, if he cares about the Federal Liberal Party, he will have left politics yesterday.
And that's where we will leave it. Jim, thank you.
Bye, Matt.